Looking for a proven deck that's flying under the radar in the Rise of Shadows meta? Well, I got a few ideas.
Hey buddy, watch this.
That's right, folks. I have 5 decks here in this video that aren't very well known and aren't being played by a lot of people, so they're probably not things you're encountering often on the ranked ladder, but if you take a look at the stats on these decks on HS Replay, they all have solid win rates, and that means a wide variety of people are finding success with them. So these are essentially sleeper decks that might catch your opponents off guard, might allow you to play Hearthstone right now in a way that nobody's expecting while still winning a lot of games. That said, let's take a look at these sleeper decks. So up first here, I have a Dragon Paladin, and this one surprised me too. I've really not seen anybody playing Dragon Paladin successfully. Like everybody, I tried to make one early on in the expansion. Didn't work all that well, but as is the case with every other deck in this video, this one has a substantially higher than 50% win rate on HS Replay. So there are people out there winning games with this deck. And if we take a look and break down what it's all about, it's pretty clearly a mid-range style Paladin, which means it's not hyper aggressive, but it's certainly not a control deck either. It's still looking to play threats and push down your opponent with pressure, but it does through with a power curve that kind of hits in the mid game. You know, your Bronze Herald into your Dragon Speaker, buffing up all your dragons, a little bit of hand buff element, playing just a lot of big minions. You can see cards like Cairn Bloodhoof even making the cut in this deck, which surprises me. It doesn't have anything to do with dragons. There's no Death Battle synergy, but it's just a great mid-range minion. So you toss in a Cairn and it's a sticky threat that just helps you keep that pressure going. And supporting that with a lot of other just good minions along the way. Things like Wormguard make the cut too, just because, again, it's a giant big dude that you play late in the game and can help you probably win against aggro sometimes too. So you have reactionary cards like Scaleworm and True Silver and Crowd Roaster. You have your own proactive threats. You have some swingy stuff, and you have some resource generation with cards like Fire Tree Witch Doctor too. And what that means is you've got a list here that's apparently working for some people out there. I'm actually shocked looking at it that it's competitive enough. But according to the data, this deck is indeed at least a little bit viable. Now, fair warning, none of the decks here are going to be as good as the top tier decks that are top tier decks for a reason right now. But you're still going to be able to complete quests. You're going to rank up a little bit. Maybe if you're really good, probably hit Legend with decks like these. But nonetheless, they're a fun new way to take a look at the Rise of Shadows meta right now. So let's move on to a Handlock list here. And I have seen Handlock a couple times, but certainly right now most people are playing Warlock in the Magic Carpet Zoo variety. This one takes a little bit of a different spin, which can be advantageous. When your opponent queues up against Warlock, they're expecting lots of small minions. They're mulliganing for, answers to small stuff. And if you come out with a Faceless Ranger and Mountain Giants and Twilight Drakes, they might just get a little surprised, and that probably gives this deck a little bit of its advantage. But again, a deck here that's working, and it is like an old school Handlock, where you're life tapping into big Mountain Giants and Twilight Drakes early. You can buff those with your Sun Fury Protector, which is pretty cool, so you can get a little push against aggro decks. You've got Faceless Rangers in there, of course, a new card, so that you can get more just high health, really difficult to deal with threats. And then Archvillain RAFAAM makes the cut too to generate additional value. If you're going against like a really control-oriented warrior, you might need your RAFAAM turning your Mortal Coils and your weaker cards into big legendary threats, right? And then Lord Jaraxxus coming back. If you don't have a hero card in Warlock, Lord Jaraxxus might just be the next thing, which is another card that can just create a ton of pressure via its hero power. And often control decks just can't deal with that 2-mana 6/6 turn after turn after turn. So I like this list a lot. I actually want to play this one a little bit myself because I love the old school days of Handlock, and this captures that pretty nicely, particularly with that Lord Jaraxxus. So if you too crave big 8/8s early in the game and Lord Jaraxxus shenanigans and Archvillain RAFAAM fun, this could be the deck for you. Moving on here, let's take a look at an aggro overload Shaman. So clearly we've seen 2 varieties of Shaman so far take prominence in the meta, the faster Murloc Shaman and then also a control Shaman deck. This one is perhaps even faster than Murloc Shaman, or at the very least operates in a little bit of a different direction, whereas Murloc Shaman almost can play more mid-rangey and summon a lot of minions time after time and is looking for that big burst via Bloodlust. This deck's more about just really fast starts where you're getting a big aggressive set of minions out early and you have follow-up damage with lightning bolts and lava bursts, and you're really just looking to hammer your opponent as quickly as you can because you don't have the same reload potential that a deck like traditional Murloc Shamans have at this point, thanks to cards like Underbelly Angler. So you're kind of more all in at any given point. That said, you still can generate a lot of crazy stuff thanks to Your Thunderhead plays, Cult Master can help you trade into additional resources. Swamp Queen Hagatha there at the end gives you that kind of last-ditch Hail Mary effort where you can maybe make one big final swing on the board or give yourself an extra bloodlust, whatever you might need. So a lot of different ways here to just find a ton of damage. You go all in as fast as you can. Cards like Sludge Slurper make that perfect with Overload synergies. Thanks to your Unbound Elemental, it's just a really fast, hyper-aggressive Overload synergy card, and that's perfect for a deck like this. So that's why this deck is able to exist. And again, a deck with a solid win rate that I'm sure will catch some people off guard with just how aggressive it can be. Moving on here, we have a big Paladin list, and I love the idea of this. I wanted to make this deck myself, but didn't get around to it in time. So we have here a list that's already starting to look a little refined, according to the HS Replay numbers, and it's all about enabling the new card Duel, which will summon a minion from both players' deck, and they will essentially fight each other. So in your deck, you're going to be summoning Tyrion Forgeling, Batterhead, Amani Warbear, Big Bad Archmage, Ysera, all this really big, crazy stuff, even an Archmage Vargoth, which means you get to do it again. And hopefully, you'll be taking favorable trades into your opponent's board, first and foremost, but beyond that, you'll just be getting a big minion that's probably going to get stuck on the board, like a Ysera or Big Bad Archmage or Tyrion, meaning you're cheating out bigger minions faster than you should for only 5 mana. Beyond that, cards like Prismatic Lens means you're going to cheat those minions out even faster and sometimes create really cool plays. There is a nice little secret package to support this, which is kind of crazy. Things like Redemption and Mysterious Blade, not perhaps what you'd expect to give you that early game resource, but if you think about it, Redemption's really cool. If you only have big minions, you play Redemption whenever you want. It's only going to activate against those big minions as long as you're careful with your hero power and Paladin. So sometimes it gives you that really important turn to Mysterious Blade to take nice trades. Other times it's just playing into your Ysera, right? And you're getting a second Ysera or Tyrion or whatever it is. And that makes this deck really cool. So it's in a way a control deck, but also kind of a big deck in a way too, right? Where you're just cheating out those big things. And apparently it works fairly well. So this is another deck I absolutely want to try more of. I think this could be a really fun way to play. And then finally here, one last deck. This is Big Warrior. And if you've been around here a lot, you'll be familiar with this because we've played a couple different versions of this deck, including, I think, maybe this exact version. And unlike the big deck that we saw previously, this one's still about big minions, but it's not about cheating them out so much as just surviving until you can play a lot of them and then overwhelming your opponent. So getting multiple copies of giant things via Dimensional Rippers and Boom Reavers, cheating a lot of them into play with Boom Ship, and eventually just overwhelming your opponent with just the raw stat package that's in this deck. There's just so many stats to deal with that some decks just can't handle it all, and eventually you stick some big stuff and you just overwhelm them. And there's a lot of control pieces in the deck to help you get to that point. Just lots of little weapons and life gain and removal kinds of cards along the way so that you can eventually get there and just demolish them. So I love this style of deck. We've played it successfully a couple different times now. I would encourage anybody to try this. I don't think it's by any means the most competitive version of Warrior. It also probably doesn't have quite as much of a surprise factor as some of the other decks on this list, but it's still a bundle of fun, particularly if you have these cards already. Just go give it a shot. I think you'll enjoy it a lot. The Big Warrior, the final sleeper deck here. And there you go, folks. These decks are all amazing. I like decks like this. I mean, again, these came from HS Replay. They all have win rates substantially higher than 50%, which means a lot of people are playing them well. Again, they're not going to be tier 1 decks, right? They're not going to be the best deck you can play. They're sleeper decks. If you're looking for something really cool that's a little different and a little fun and unique, then go to decks like these, and I think you'll certainly enjoy them. That said, if you guys have encountered any other sleeper decks out there that have some proven stats to showcase just how good they might be and maybe they're being underrated by the community, share those in the comments below. If you got an unproven sleeper deck that you've made, sure, feel free to share that too. But until then, thanks so much for watching, and until next time, game on.